o'clock. ABC 10 News at 5 starts right now.
The U.S. Capitol remains locked down hours after a man slammed his car into a barricade, killing a Capitol police officer and injuring another. What happened in the moments leading up to that deadly encounter?
And a big step towards reopening. California sets a date for some indoor events to return the rules that will be put in place to keep everyone safe. And homeowners in El Cajon rallying against the placement of a sexually violent predator in their neighborhood.
ABC 10 News at 5 starts now.
This is the U.S. Capitol police officer who died after a man rammed a car into a barricade outside the U.S. Capitol and then emerged carrying a knife. Good evening. I'm Lindsay Pena.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. Another Capitol police officer was injured in this morning's incident and is expected to recover. Tonight, flags at the White House, they are at half staff in memory of Officer William Evans, who had been on the Capitol Police Force for 18 years. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze is at the Capitol with the latest on this story.
A deadly incident at the nation's capital when a vehicle rammed into a barricade toward two Capitol police officers, killing one of them. The suspect also dead. Police identifying the officer as William Billy Evans. He'd served on the force for 18 years.
And it is with a very, very heavy heart that I announce one of our officers has succumbed to his injuries.
A source says Capitol Police opened fire after the vehicle rammed into a barricade on Constitution Avenue on the north side of the complex. A federal officer says the vehicle was occupied by a single driver. Authorities say the individual exited the vehicle armed with a knife and lunged toward the officers, injuring them before he was shot. According to an FBI spokesperson, the FBI Washington field office has responded to the incident. Law enforcement already on high alert in the wake of the Capitol attack on January 6th, which left 5 people dead. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi now ordering flags at the Capitol to be flown at half staff for the second time this year to honor a fallen officer.
This is a group of men and women who have been through a significant amount of trauma over the last few months. And today is just another example of what they do every day for us to put their lives on the line, and officers across the country.
Now, much of the fencing here at the Capitol was recently taken down. Congress is currently in recess, so most members were not in the building when this happened. President Biden is at Camp David for the weekend. In a statement, he said he is heartbroken for the officer's family. Elizabeth Schulze, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
And now to the latest on the coronavirus. In less than 2 weeks, many indoor concerts, theater performances, and other private gatherings will be allowed to start up again here in California. As our ABC 10 News reporter Jennifer Kastner explains, the unexpected announcement came just a few hours ago.
A return to normalcy getting closer by the day. Friday, the state revealed that many indoor events can start up again on April 15th with some limitations. That's also the same day that vaccine eligibility expands to those who are 16 and older.
The kinds of venues that are allowed are indoor seated venues. So that would be theaters, sports stadiums. You can also do meetings and receptions and conferences. So that could be convention centers, hotels.
The capacities for these events will be dependent upon what reopening tier each county is in. And in order to increase capacities at some venues, the state will allow fully vaccinated sections where people can sit shoulder to shoulder.
Venues can have fully vaccinated sections without social distancing, but mask required. Other sections must continue to maintain their 6-foot distancing.
As of now, event goers will have to provide verification of vaccination or proof of a negative test within the last 72 hours. When asked about concerns over vaccine card fraud, the state's public health officer provided this response.
I think most people will be honest because the vaccines are freely available. And I think that's sort of really the key thing is that the barriers to getting vaccinated are really coming down.
The reopening announcement comes as the statewide positive case rate plummets and vaccination rates continue to increase. Jennifer Kastner, ABC 10 News.
San Diego County is currently in the red tier. Under that tier, indoor events are allowed 10% capacity for venues holding up to 1,500 people. If all guests do show proof of vaccination or negative test, that capacity could increase to 25%.
And here are the latest numbers on coronavirus in San Diego County. Almost 500 new cases were reported today, bringing our total to more than 271,000. And there were 13 new deaths, bringing that total to 3,568. A startling what if. Scripps health researchers say if restrictions hadn't been relaxed in San Diego County last summer, dozens of deaths could have been avoided. I spoke to one of the doctors who headed up the study to find out exactly how they came to that conclusion and what the information can tell us going forward. Last summer, after months of being under a stay-at-home order, COVID cases were at a rate that prompted San Diego County to ease some restrictions, allowing places like restaurants and gyms to partially reopen.
We found is had that not happened, according to our models and calculations, around 45 people may not have died. And in fact, 400 people may not have been hospitalized in the first place.
Nathaniel Brown is the director of health data sciences at Scripps. He and his team, along with researchers at Columbia University, look back at that 25-day period from June 12th to July 7th. Although there's no way to definitively prove something that didn't happen, Brown says the computer models are pretty accurate.
We can say with around 95% confidence that these results are, what we would expect to have happened had the situations on the ground been a little different.
ABC 10 News reached out to the county, which said they haven't seen the study, and without reviewing the findings, they were unable to comment. As for Scripps, administrators say studies and prediction models allow them to be better prepared to treat patients.
How many beds would we need available? How many nurses do we need to staff? How many are going to end up in the ICU versus need med-surg? How many will be on ventilators? How much PPE or personal protective equipment would be needed for our staff to actually safely take care of patients?
And as we continue to see more things reopen, Scripps says the study only reinforces the continued need for things like social distancing and masking.
We want to remain vigilant and keep doing what we've been doing.
A major difference between this round of reopenings and last year is, of course, the vaccine. Scripps, like other healthcare providers, is urging people to get one when it's their turn.
Governor Gavin Newsom was in San Diego just this morning touring a pop-up vaccination site in City Heights. Now, this comes as the state works to vaccinate 4 million people in the hardest hit zip codes. Now, once this is done, the state says it will change tier requirements. Right now, San Diego County sits in the red tier, but could move into the orange tier next week.
The number of vaccines that have been delivered under this equity framework, 3.6 million, almost 3.7 million on their way, 4 million next week, which will allow cities and counties like San Diego to move more quickly through these tiers, ultimately getting to a green tier.
The governor also applauded our county for leading the state with vaccines administered. And a massive effort is underway to get more coronavirus vaccines in our communities of color. And while there has been progress, data shows there is still a long way to go. Our ABC 10 News reporter Jared Aarons takes an in-depth look at what advocates are doing to make sure some of the hardest hit areas do get vaccinated.
Long lines wrapped around the Sherman Heights Community Center Wednesday for a no-appointment vaccination clinic designed to reach underserved communities. It's one of several ways the county and minority leaders are working to get shots to the hardest hit areas.
We've definitely seen improvement. There's still a lot of work to do.
Roberto Alcantar with the Chicano Federation says vaccinating the Hispanic Latino community is crucial as they make up 55% of the county's COVID cases. In February, Governor Newsom announced plans to set aside 40% of COVID vaccines for underserved and minority populations. At the time, Hispanic and Latinos in San Diego had only received 14% of all the available shots, even though they make up 34% of San Diego's total population. Now, that number is 20%.
The progress that we've seen is very hopeful, right? It's showing that we're on the right path. Could we do better? Definitely.
In the last 2 months, the Chicano Federation has partnered with nearly a dozen other minority outreach groups, taking vaccines and information into the community rather than forcing people to search for it online. Events like Project Save and the Promontores effort have helped break down barriers like geography, language, and mistrust.
Going to a county office or going to a county location, talking to county employees, that is not very comfortable for a lot of our communities. They'd rather see us as a trusted messengers.
But there's still a long way to go. Alcantar points specifically to the 92154 zip code, which has the second highest COVID case rate in the county, but ranks 25th in vaccines. And as eligibility expands, Alcantar worries his community could get lost in the shuffle and fall further behind. That's why his organization will keep pushing for more direct outreach.
We just pretty much are out there in the community every single day, talking to folks, providing information, and really helping to create innovative ways to access the vaccine.
The Chicano Federation is also working with local grocery markets and the Otay Mesa Chamber of Commerce to bring vaccine clinics to work sites, so essential workers in food, agriculture, and the service industries won't have to take time off to get their shots. They say doing that is the next step to making sure everyone gets inoculated. Jared Aarons, ABC 10 News.
And if you have been fully vaccinated, you can travel without much worry. That is the latest from the CDC, but travel still isn't recommended at this time because of rising numbers of coronavirus cases. Now, the agency says as long as precautions are taken, including mask wearing, fully vaccinated people, they can travel within the U.S. without getting tested for COVID-19 or self-quarantining after. The CDC considers someone fully vaccinated 2 weeks after receiving the last required dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. And you can keep up with any new developments surrounding the pandemic by downloading our free mobile app. Just go to the App Store and search 10 News.
Families will be constantly looking over their shoulders.
Anger and angst as neighbors near El Cajon rally against the proposed placement of a notorious sexual predator. As ABC 10 News reporter Michael Chen tells us, those neighbors now preparing to raise those concerns before a judge.
Sarah Thompson, who has an 8-year-old son, vividly recalls hearing about the proposed placement of sexually violent predator Douglas Badger earlier this week.
Kind of had to pause the news, rewind it, and watch it again. And then we just were in shock. I couldn't sleep that night.
The California Department of State Hospitals is recommending Badger be placed in a home on Horizon Hills Drive, a few doors down from Thompson.
There's children all up and down the streets in our neighborhood. It's within less than a mile from 2 elementary schools. It creates a climate of fear, of uncertainty.
Badger was convicted of sexual assaults dating back to the 70s for preying on young male hitchhikers and abducting them at gunpoint. He was released from prison in 1997 and into a maximum security state hospital, classified as a sexually violent predator likely to reoffend. In 2014, the state proposed releasing Badger into a home in Campo despite protests. He ended up withdrawing his petition for release. Last year, he filed another petition arguing he was not likely to reoffend. In January, a judge granted his conditional release. County Supervisor Joel Anderson.
Of the last 4 sexual predators, they've all been placed in East County. We should not be the dumping ground for sexual predators.
Anderson urging those with concerns to make their opinions known ahead of a Zoom hearing before a judge April 20th. Meanwhile, Thompson will meet with neighbors next week in hopes of preventing the placement of the man she says doesn't belong here.
Families will be terrified. Families will be constantly looking over their shoulders.
Michael Chen, ABC 10 News.
Badger is one of 2 sexually violent predators that might be placed in the same home. The public can send in comments through April 9th. We have all the contact info on 10news.com. A deadly crash in North County last night is still under investigation. 2 people died after their car plunged down a hillside in the Deer Springs area. Officers discovered the bodies just after midnight after some people reported that their friends had been in a crash. But when those friends got to the scene, they only found parts of the car. It wasn't until fire crews arrived that they found that vehicle 500 feet down the hillside. Police say the victims had just left a party up the road when that crash happened.